At a college reunion dinner, a slightly overweight man raised his glass and winked at Jack.
Jack, you've been with Emily for 9 years, right? Haven't you experienced the 7-year itch yet?
The man was already drunk, speaking without any restraint.
You're a successful man now, aren't you? Your company's assets are worth billions. There must be plenty of young women eager to be with you.
Don't joke about that. I'm married, and Emily and I will never get divorced.
You never know. Even the most loving couples have their moments.
Jack held Emily's hand affectionately and said,
Emily and I will never have such moments.
Emily smiled at Jack and then lowered her head to eat, not wanting to engage with the drunken nonsense. Today was Emily's birthday, but it coincided with the college reunion. She disliked these pretentious and competitive gatherings, but Jack needed the connections and reputation for his company, so they had to attend. Emily had to accompany him reluctantly. Of course, that wasn't the real reason she was there. The real reason was...
Jack, are you still in touch with Sophia? I ran into her a few days ago. She just returned from abroad. Rich girls are different, aren't they? Such grace.
Emily silently tightened her grip on her chopsticks. This was the other reason she was there. Sophia, their former college classmate and Jack's obsessive pursuer. Jack and Emily had been together since high school, and they were known as the sweetest couple in college. But Sophia shamelessly kept trying to get between them. She would change her phone number 10 times a day just to contact Jack. No matter how Jack blocked her, ignored her, or even changed his number, he couldn't get rid of her.
I heard Sophia had some cosmetic work done. She's really beautiful now.
Emily paused. Although Jack never paid much attention to Sophia, as a rival, Emily had to keep an eye on her. She knew Sophia's family was extremely wealthy, and she could spend $1 million in a month without batting an eye. In terms of family background, Emily, an orphan, couldn't compare to her at all. But Emily had one advantage Sophia couldn't match: a very beautiful face. During college, even talent scouts from entertainment companies asked if she wanted to become a star. But now...
I have pictures of Sophia after her cosmetic work.
The table erupted in exclamations of admiration.
Is that really her? The change is incredible. She's so beautiful.
So, what if she's beautiful? It's all artificial.
What's wrong with that? If you had the money, you'd do it too.
The phone with Sophia's photos was passed to Emily. She couldn't resist her curiosity and took a look. Honestly, Sophia did look stunning, with a pure and alluring charm.
Don't worry, Jack said, taking the phone. He glanced at the photo casually and then smiled at Emily. In my eyes, she'll never compare to you.
Stop drinking so much. Have some soup.
Jack squeezed her fingers affectionately and said,
Thank you, honey.
Emily found his sweetness a bit too much and playfully kicked him under the table. Jack smiled good-naturedly, but his gaze drifted back to Sophia's photo. The dinner dragged on, and the conversations were dull and pretentious, full of people boasting about themselves or mocking others who were less successful. Emily took a break to go to the restroom, thinking the dinner was boring anyway, so she sat on the toilet and played with her phone. She vented to Olivia about the dinner. A few minutes later, 2 people walked in, chatting. From their voices, she recognized them as attendees of the reunion. One was Paul, and the other was a spouse.
See, I wasn't lying. Jack is really handsome. He was famous for his looks in college, and now he's not only the most successful but also the best looking. Look at the other guys, they're all overweight.
No wonder he found such a beautiful wife.
Just wait and see, they'll get divorced sooner or later. Now that Sophia is back, do you think they can have a peaceful life?
They're already married. What can Sophia do?
Is there any man in this world who doesn't stray? If it were before, you could blame Sophia for not being attractive enough. But now, she's both beautiful and wealthy.
I hid in the stall, silently listening to their conversation. Thinking about Sophia's extreme behavior, I did feel a moment of unease, but looking at the wedding ring on my finger, I gradually felt reassured. Jack has no feelings for Sophia. Back in college, whenever Sophia gave Jack something, he would refuse it outright. Many people said Jack was rude, but he would just say,
I already have a girlfriend, so anything from other women, I'll throw away.
My phone buzzed, and Olivia sent me a message.
I think you should check your husband's phone recently. Even though you two have a good relationship, just in case. And you two don't have kids yet.
I couldn't help but touch my lower abdomen. Jack and I have been married for 5 years, but we haven't had children yet. Neither of us is in a hurry, so we haven't considered getting checked. The dinner finally ended. Jack drank a lot and went straight to bed after getting home, falling asleep immediately. I called his name a few times, but he didn't wake up. Instead, he frowned uncomfortably. In the early days of his company, he had many social engagements and often drank too much, which hurt his stomach. Now, whenever he drinks, his stomach hurts. Seeing him frown, I guessed he was uncomfortable again. I covered him with a blanket and went to the kitchen. A few days ago, Olivia introduced me to a medicinal tea that helps with stomach issues and sobering up. It arrived yesterday, so I made a cup for Jack. After drinking it, he seemed a bit more awake and looked at me.
Baby.
Jack hadn't called me that in years, he usually called me wife. I didn't think much of it and pulled the blanket over him. All right, sleep.
Not feeling well. Help me take off my clothes and shoes.
I then realized he had gone to bed without even taking off his shoes. I wanted to be angry, but seeing his drunken state, I held back. As I bent down to take off his shoes, a gut feeling told me something was wrong. Jack never behaved like this before. Even when drunk, he was always quiet and would tidy himself up before lying down because he didn't want me to take care of a drunk. With my heart pounding, I used his fingerprint to unlock his phone while he slept and opened his WeChat. I didn't even have to search, I immediately saw something glaringly obvious. Jack's pin chat was with another woman's selfie, and I had just seen that woman at the dinner, Sophia. Not only that, but Jack had saved her contact as baby. So, when Jack called me baby earlier, was he calling me or Sophia? I took a deep breath and opened the chat. That's when I realized that Jack and Sophia had been in contact all along. Sophia went abroad during her junior year, and I had breathed a sigh of relief, thinking there would be no one persistently interfering between us. But now, the truth slapped me in the face. The more I read their chat history, the colder and angrier I felt. At first, Sophia sent Jack many messages, but he didn't reply. Until 5 years ago, on our wedding day, Sophia sent a selfie of herself in a wedding dress. By then, Sophia had started getting cosmetic procedures, looking much prettier than before. With the wedding dress and makeup, she had the appearance of a beautiful social media influencer.
Do you think I look good now?
Did you get cosmetic surgery?
Yes, but I'm not done yet. I want to become even more beautiful so I can be worthy of the best you.
Jack didn't reply to that message, but it was clear that from then on, he started responding to Sophia's messages. Sophia would constantly send him updates, selfies, and even details about her cosmetic procedures and experiences, complaining about the pain and hardship while saying it was all worth it to be with Jack. Jack still didn't respond much. But their chat frequency increased noticeably, and I saw another message that made me feel disappointed and heartbroken. About 2 years ago, Jack's company had some issues, and he was overwhelmed with work and social engagements. I felt sorry for him, but I knew little about his company's affairs, so I couldn't help much, only providing support and comfort in our daily life. During that time, I would come home right after work every day, trying different ways to make him delicious meals, give him massages, and even drive out in the middle of the night to pick him up when he was intoxicated. I lost count of how many times he drank too much and threw up in someone else's car or on the street, but I always cleaned up without a word of complaint. He was my husband, I loved him, and I couldn't help him with his work, so this was the only way I could support him. But all my efforts couldn't compare to one phone call from Sophia. Jack mentioned a few problems at his company to Sophia on WeChat, and with her privileged background, she easily helped him out of the crisis. In comparison, what was my love and care worth? With trembling fingers, I continued scrolling through their chat history. It was obvious that from then on, Jack's attitude towards Sophia changed significantly, even calling her baby. They were video calling each other every day. A year ago, Jack agreed to fly abroad to visit Sophia. I closed my eyes, forcing back the bitter tears. No wonder Jack started traveling frequently last year, lying to me that he had an important client abroad and needed to go there often for meetings and relationship maintenance. Of course, someone you share a bed with is indeed an important client. I spent the night sitting in the living room, passing my birthday like that. It was also that night that I contacted a divorce lawyer online to inquire about the division of assets after divorce. Jack's company was established after we got married, so I owned half of his company's assets. If I divorced him, I could legally take half of it. Thinking about this, I pressed the edge of my phone. Jack's company was not stable. If I divorced him now and took half of his assets, his company would definitely face problems. But I slowly released my fingers. What does it matter to me? I'm not the one who was unfaithful. As dawn broke, I heard Jack getting up in the bedroom. The hangover left him looking a bit haggard. He rubbed his temples, and despite his disheveled hair, he still looked handsome and dignified.
Honey, why didn't you help me undress last night? I slept so uncomfortably.
I looked at my phone and coldly said,
If you think my care isn't good enough, why don't you go find Sophia? She should be the kind of sweet wife you want, right?
Jack's body instantly stiffened. He looked at me with panic in his eyes, stammering as if he was very guilty and scared.
W, what are you talking about?
Sorry, Jack. I looked at your phone while you were asleep. Are you enjoying your affair with Sophia?
Jack froze in place.
Emily, let me explain. Sophia and I are just.
I quietly watched Jack, waiting to see what kind of lie he could come up with. But Jack couldn't come up with a reasonable explanation. After all, his infidelity was real, and there was no way to explain it away.
Jack,
At this point, I suddenly felt a lump in my throat, and my heart ached.
Let's get a divorce.
I still managed to say it.
No! Emily, I will never divorce you. Don't even think about it.
I glanced at him, thinking he must be reluctant to let me take half of his assets. After a sleepless night, I was exhausted and didn't want to have a big fight with him.
Then we'll see each other in court.
After saying that, I grabbed my bag and left the home we had lived in for 5 years. Outside, I began to feel lost and heartbroken. Watching the people passing by and the loving couples and families on the street, I couldn't hold back anymore and squatted down, hugging my knees and crying. I grew up without parents, raised by my grandfather. When he passed away during my college years, I felt like my world was collapsing. It was Jack who held me, telling me over and over again.
Don't cry, Emily. You still have me. I will always be with you, always by your side. Emily, I love you, and I always will.
But it was all just lies from a man. I didn't know how long I cried when suddenly someone patted my thin shoulder. With tearful eyes, I looked up. Because I had cried for so long, I couldn't see the person's face clearly. I could only tell he was a young man.
Here, wipe your tears.
I took the tissue, wiping my tears and snot haphazardly. Embarrassed and awkward, I asked the man.
Shouldn't you be telling me not to cry at a time like this?
He smiled slightly, his voice carrying a hint of a low, husky tone that was very attractive.
When it's time to let it out, you should have a good cry. Being strong comes after the tears.
He suddenly reached out and touched the corner of my tear-stained eye.
But I hope this is the last time you cry.
There was a strange mix of pity and tenderness in his tone. I wasn't oblivious, I sensed the ambiguity in his attitude and words. I blinked and finally saw his face clearly. He looked quite young, at least a few years younger than me, with a handsome and sunny appearance. But I didn't know this person.
Sorry, I need to go home, or my husband will worry.
With that, I stood up and hurried away. When I reached the street corner, I glanced back and saw that the man was also looking at me, with an expression I couldn't understand. I thought he was strange and quickened my pace to leave. After leaving home, I realized I had nowhere else to go. Jack needed a lot of funds to run his company, so we only had one fully paid house, which Jack's parents bought for us as a wedding gift before we got married. I never sought Jack's money, so I never questioned the ownership of the house. After marriage, considering Jack's difficulties, I never thought about buying another house. But reality showed me that being considerate of a man doesn't end well. Like now, even though my husband was unfaithful, I was the one with nowhere to go. In the end, I could only go to Olivia's place.
Leave. You must leave immediately. Jack's company is worth billions now. Take the money and find some young, handsome college guys. They're considerate and strong, and you don't have to be responsible for them. How great is that?
Once I get the money, I'll buy a big villa first.
You should have bought one long ago. Come on, let's look at houses now.
After some fun with Olivia, I calmed down and formally contacted Mr. Johnson to draft a professional divorce agreement, which I then sent to Jack. Almost immediately, Jack called.
Emily, stop this nonsense. I told you, I won't divorce you.
What about Sophia? Don't you want this wealthy opportunity?
Jack was silent for a few seconds, which made me feel even more disgusted. After 9 years together, I finally saw Jack's true colors, so realistic, opportunistic, and despicable.
Don't worry about her. Anyway, don't even think about divorce. Emily, I'm telling you, once you marry me, you're mine for life. Even after death, you'll be buried with me.
Is this amusing to you, Jack?
When are you coming home?
I hung up the phone directly. The next day was Monday. I went to work as usual, but soon after arriving, my boss called me in and pinned some unfounded mistakes on me, saying they were going to let me go.
Emily, you've only been here for 6 months, but I personally appreciate you. So, I'm giving you time to resign yourself. Otherwise...
He stopped there. I understood everything. 6 months ago, at my previous job, I reprimanded a client who harassed me. Even though I was in the right, I was still let go. Jack then got me this job, saying it was run by a friend of his, and I wouldn't encounter any inappropriate clients. I didn't think much at the time and took the job, not expecting Jack to use it against me now. Sure enough, As soon as I left my boss's office, I received a text from Jack.
When are you coming home?
When we get divorced.
I told you, I won't divorce you.
I blocked all of Jack's contacts and submitted my resignation. Given the situation, if I didn't resign, the company would find a reason to let me go, affecting my future job prospects. My resignation was approved quickly. Within an hour, I had packed my things and left the company. I realized that divorcing Jack would be a long battle. Jack wouldn't agree to a divorce easily to keep his company stable, so I needed to rent a place. I couldn't keep bothering Olivia. I took out my phone and started browsing rental listings while walking. Suddenly, someone stopped in front of me. It was a woman dressed in designer clothes, with a stylish haircut, sparkling diamond earrings and necklace, and a branded bag in her hand, exuding an air of wealth.
Emily, long time no see.
I stared at the woman's face. Her makeup was heavy, and her features seemed stiff, with obvious signs of cosmetic enhancements. It took me a few seconds to realize this woman was Sophia. She looked completely different from her photos, where she appeared natural and beautiful. Now, her face was marked by artificial enhancements.
So it's you. You look so different from your photos that I didn't recognize you.
After saying that, I pretended to scrutinize her face carefully.
You did a good job with the surgery. At least you look good in photos.
Sophia's expression froze instantly. She said coldly,
I came to tell you that Jack is with me now, and next month, I'll bring in a $50 million investment for his company. Emily, if you know what's good for you, you'll leave him voluntarily. Otherwise, when he asks for a divorce, you'll be the one embarrassed. After all, you mean nothing to Jack.
Is that so? But what should I do? Jack just texted me saying he would never divorce me.
I showed Sophia the text Jack had just sent. Sophia's expression darkened immediately as she stared at the phone screen.
Instead of wasting time on me, why not go and persuade Jack to agree to the divorce sooner?
I took a few steps and then stopped.
Oh, by the way, tell Jack that if he's willing to give me $50 million directly, I might consider not taking a share of his company's stock. After all, I'd rather stay away from a jerk than have company shares.
$50 million, Emily, do you think you're worth that? What makes you think you deserve it?
Because of my marriage certificate with Jack, because I'm his legal wife, not a disgraceful secret.
You.
I didn't want to waste any more words with Sophia and left directly. After renting a place, I started looking for a new job. But it wasn't easy. On one hand, jobs were hard to find. On the other hand, it was because of Jack. We worked in the same emerging field, and Jack's company was a leader in it. He knew almost all the company owners in this field. One word from him was enough to prevent these companies from hiring me, a small employee. After another failed interview, I went to a bar and ordered a few drinks. The more I drank, the more ridiculous I felt about my current situation. Back when Jack was struggling to start his business, I helped out in his small company, putting in countless hours and effort. Several important projects were even done by me, staying up all night. Later, as his company started to thrive, our conflicts in life and work grew, even leading to a serious fight where we almost separated. After cooling down, Jack held me and cried, saying he truly loved me and was grateful for all my sacrifices. He said he never wanted to separate. I was moved and, in a moment of impulse, gave up all my career achievements, left his company voluntarily, and joined another company as an ordinary employee. With fewer work-related conflicts, our life indeed became peaceful and harmonious. At that time, I felt fortunate for my choice because it at least preserved my family. Years later, looking back, I only felt my past self was incredibly foolish. I ordered another drink, and just as I was about to take a sip, a hand suddenly reached out and stopped my glass.
What kind of trouble is worth getting drunk over late at night?
I looked up and saw a familiar handsome face. It was the man who handed me a tissue when I was upset on the street a few days ago.
Are you a stalker? Have you been following me? I'm warning you, I'm not easy to mess with.
Senior, you really don't remember me at all. I'm Michael.
Hearing that name, I finally remembered. When I was a junior, I met a freshman who had just arrived at school. He was using a skateboard to move his luggage, but he fell, scattering his belongings and injuring his hand. I happened to be there and couldn't pretend I didn't see it, so I helped him pick up his things and treated his hand. I vented to Olivia about the dinner.
Few minutes later, two people walked in, chatting. From their voices, I recognized them as attendees of the reunion.
See, I wasn't lying. Jack is really handsome. He was famous for his looks in college, and now he's not only the most successful but also the best looking. Look at the other guys, they're all overweight.
No wonder he found such a beautiful wife.
I didn't respond and pushed him away.
You should go home early.
Then I opened the door, leaving Jack standing outside. I leaned against the tightly closed door, focusing all my attention on the other side. Jack was still lingering outside, he hadn't left. Suddenly, I remembered how he had looked earlier, sitting outside the door, falling asleep in such a disheveled state. My mind became a bit chaotic. But just then, I heard the vibration of a phone from outside, followed by Jack's hurried footsteps and the name he called out when he answered the call.
Sophia!
I closed my eyes, feeling ridiculous for my earlier confusion. I lay in bed, tossing and turning for half the night, unable to sleep. It wasn't until dawn that I finally felt a bit drowsy, but just then, my stomach started to ache. At first, it was just a slight cramp, but it grew increasingly severe, and then there was blood. Seeing the blood, I suddenly remembered that my period had been absent for 2 months. My menstrual cycle had always been irregular, so I hadn't paid much attention to the timing. Now, doing the math, I suddenly realized I might be pregnant. Unable to sleep any longer, I immediately took a taxi to the hospital. After a series of tests, I received the results. Indeed, I was 9 weeks pregnant. I slumped onto a bench, my mind in complete disarray.
What should I do?
I tightly clutched the test results, completely lost. Should I keep this child or not?
Let's start with N4. You're 2 months pregnant and experiencing abdominal pain and bleeding, which indicates the fetus is unstable. After the 4, you need to be careful, avoid strenuous activities, rest more, eat well, and ensure proper nutrition. Also, avoid alcohol and smoking.
These past few days, I had been running around looking for a job, and I often drank at night. Before my rational mind could react, my hand moved to my lower abdomen, filled with guilt.
All right. Go get the medication and have the nurse administer the 4. Fortunately, it's not too serious now. Just be more careful in the future.
Looking at the prescription in Dr. Smith's hand, I suddenly had a realization.
It's just a pregnancy. I can have this baby on my own. What's the big deal? It doesn't affect my divorce at all. I just need to keep it from Jack and leave with the child.
With that thought, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I stood up and smiled at Dr. Smith.
Okay, I'll be more careful from now on.
After returning home, I rested for a few days and then went back to the hospital for a follow-up. The doctor said my condition had improved, but I still needed to be cautious, avoid strenuous activities, and rest more. I took note of everything. I contacted Mr. Johnson to revise the divorce agreement. Now, I didn't want any shares of the company, I just wanted money. I wanted to finalize the divorce quickly. After meeting with Mr. Johnson, I suddenly received a text message asking if I was free today for a meal together.
Who are you?
The reply came quickly.
It's me, Michael.
How did you get my number?
You gave it to me in college. You haven't changed your number all these years, and neither have I.
From this message, I inexplicably sensed a hint of grievance.
Can we have dinner together, Michael?
Out of a strange sense of guilt, I agreed to have dinner with Michael. We met nearby. Despite the years that had passed, Michael looked much more mature and composed, but his sense of humor remained unchanged. He shared many interesting stories from his time abroad. When the pleasant dinner ended, I checked the time and realized 2 hours had passed. Those 2 hours were the most relaxed I had felt in a long time. After leaving the restaurant, Michael drove me home. When we arrived at my apartment building, he turned to look at me with a deep gaze that I couldn't meet.
We're here. I'll head off now. Emily, can we meet again?
I unconsciously touched my lower abdomen, thinking that I would soon leave this city. I smiled and vaguely replied,
We'll see.
I didn't expect to encounter another uninvited guest, Sophia, as soon as I reached my doorstep. She was still dressed in luxury brands from head to toe, even wearing sunglasses at night. Her bright red lips were striking. When she saw me, she let out a haughty snort.
Emily, Jack has agreed to divorce you. Sign this. As long as you sign now and agree to give up the company shares, Jack will give you $60 million.
She pulled out a divorce agreement from her platinum bag.
That's $10 million more than you asked for before. So, sign it now, or you might not even get $10 million if you drag this out.
I really didn't want to be entangled with Jack anymore. I was pregnant, and I didn't want Jack to know about the baby.
Fine.
I took the document from Sophia's hand and signed it without hesitation.
All right, you can leave now.
Sophia checked my signature and, satisfied, said,
Smart move. Also, come to this address tomorrow.
She handed me a piece of paper with an address on it.
Don't worry, it's just to sign some documents to give up the shares.
Get this straight. You guys are the ones begging me for a divorce. If you want me to sign those documents, bring them to me. Why should I go to you? Dream on.
With that, I slammed the door shut, not bothering to see her reaction. The next day, I went to the cemetery to visit my parents and tell them about my impending divorce and that I was about to become a single mother. The weather was gloomy, and it was colder than usual. I sat in the cemetery for half an hour, shivering and sneezing several times. My lower abdomen started to feel uncomfortable. Worried about the baby, I said goodbye to my parents and left the cemetery. As I walked out, a fine rain began to fall. I used my bag to shield myself from the rain and jogged towards the exit. Maybe it was the gloomy weather, but I felt a sense of unease.
Please, let the baby be okay.
Finally, I reached the exit of the cemetery. This place was remote, and taxis were rare. Just as I was about to call for a ride, a red luxury car suddenly stopped in front of me. The car door opened, and Sophia stepped out. This time, she looked far from her usual glamorous self. Her hair was messy, her makeup was smudged, and even her surgically enhanced features seemed distorted. She glared at me as if I were her mortal enemy.
What do you want?
Emily, it's all because of you.
She reached out to grab me, but I dodged. However, she went berserk, wildly swinging her arms and desperately grabbing my arm.
It's all because of you. If it weren't for you, Jack would have been mine alone. You should disappear.
Let go of me.
In the end, I couldn't avoid Sophia's grasp. She seized my wrist, and in the struggle, I lost my footing and fell backward. To the left of the cemetery entrance was a moat. After losing my balance, I fell straight into the moat. The early autumn water was already very cold, and with the nearly 2-meter drop from the road to the water, I was stunned when I hit the water. The icy water engulfed me, and my whole body ached. My mind went blank for a few seconds before I finally reacted in the suffocating water. I quickly kicked and swam to the surface. Sophia stood on the roadside, looking at me in panic. Her lips were moving, probably cursing, but the sound of the water drowned out her voice. I couldn't hear her, nor did I want to. The water was too cold, and my lower abdomen started to cramp painfully. I couldn't stay in the water any longer. I swam towards the shore, but the pain in my lower abdomen grew worse, making it hard for me to move my limbs. I even saw a few strands of bright red spreading from beneath me.
No. Please, no.
I desperately waved my arms, but the pain in my abdomen was too intense, and my strength was draining fast. I couldn't swim anymore and began to sink. As the cold water covered my head, I saw Sophia turn and run away. A few minutes later, I was pulled out of the water by the cemetery guard and a passerby. They helped me to the roadside and covered me with a blanket. I shivered uncontrollably, clutching the blanket. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Sophia again. She stood far away, hurriedly getting into a car and leaving. Perhaps out of a guilty conscience, Sophia didn't run away immediately after turning around. She called for help and had me pulled out of the water. But I didn't thank her at all. If it weren't for her, I wouldn't have fallen into the water in the first place.
Oh my, there's so much blood. Is she injured?
An ambulance. Please call an ambulance.
Someone called an ambulance, and another person suggested I contact a relative since they were just bystanders and couldn't accompany me to the hospital. My bag was lost in the river, so I had to borrow someone else's phone. But without any family, who could I contact? I thought of Olivia, but I couldn't remember her number. The only number I had memorized was Jack's. The pain in my lower abdomen was excruciating, and the bleeding was getting worse. I had no choice but to call Jack. The cold, mechanical beeping of the phone rang out, but no one answered. Just as it was about to disconnect automatically, Jack's cold voice finally came through.
Hello?
Jack, you.
Emily, what do you mean?
I was suddenly stunned, my body cold and my heart aching in the chill.
How many times do I have to tell you, I won't divorce you? Do you think signing the divorce papers means anything? I'm telling you, I won't agree. Emily, you'll never get a divorce in this lifetime.
With that, Jack hung up the phone. I was left holding the phone stiffly, the cold river water dripping from my chin to the ground. After a long while, I closed my eyes tightly and returned the phone to the bystander.
Thank you, but I don't need to call a relative. I'll just go to the ambulance myself.
The bystander wanted to say something, but the ambulance arrived at that moment. 2 nurses got out and helped me up. As soon as I stood, the pain in my abdomen intensified, and the bright red blood flowed slowly and coldly down my legs. I had indeed lost the baby.
Your health was already poor, and such incidents were likely. But you're still young, and with proper rest and care, there will be future opportunities.
But I was too tired and just closed my eyes.
Do you need us to notify your family? You'll need bed rest for a few days and someone to take care of you.
I'll handle it myself, so Dr. Smith lent me his phone.
When I called Jack again, the first thing I said was,
Jack, I was pregnant.
There was a moment of silence on the other end.
Emily, what did you say? Is it true?
Yes, I was 2 months pregnant.
That's wonderful, Emily. We have a child now, so don't talk about divorce anymore. We can.
But, Jack, I just lost the baby.
What?
When I called you earlier, while you were angrily accusing me, I was bleeding and losing our child.
Emily, why didn't you say anything then?
Jack, remember this, our child is gone because of you. You are the one responsible.
With that, I hung up the phone. A few hours later, Jack arrived at the hospital. He looked haggard, his eyes red as soon as he saw me, as if he had a lot to say but didn't know how to start. Finally, he walked to my bedside and tightly held my hand. I looked out the window, not wanting to see him or talk to him.
I just found out that Sophia came to see you today. Emily, why didn't you tell me about the pregnancy earlier? If I had known.
Jack, please, let's get a divorce.
Jack fell silent, his eyes red as he looked at me pleadingly. I slowly turned my face, my gaze cold and calm.
I don't love you at all anymore, Jack.
Jack's face went pale, and he stared at me in shock.
Now, just seeing you makes me sick.
Jack's face turned ashen, and he clutched my hand helplessly, choking up.
But I love you, Emily. I really do.
I pulled my hand away and turned my back to him, lying on my side. I didn't say another word to him. During my hospital stay, Jack came to take care of me every day. He even learned to cook and make soups, bringing his homemade, bland meals to me every day to try to please me. On the day I was discharged from the hospital, Jack came to pick me up with a red mark on his face. I knew right away that he had a fight with Sophia, but I just found it ridiculous and disgusting. I walked past Jack without a glance, and he quickly caught up, trying to appease me.
Hopeful, Emily, I've broken up with Sophia. I won't contact her again. You're the one I love, Emily.
Angry, Jack, you knew I lost the baby because of Sophia. She was partly responsible for it, yet you took so long to break up with her. And you still have the nerve to say you love me?
Jack was speechless.
Serious, let's get a divorce, Jack. If you don't agree, we'll see each other in court. I'll make sure all your infidelities are exposed.
I turned and walked out of the hospital. Jack stood there for a few seconds before resolutely following me.
Determined, Emily, I can agree to the divorce, but I won't give up on you. No matter how much time and money it takes, I'll win you back.
I didn't look back and got into a taxi. A month later, I received the divorce certificate from Jack. But Jack didn't give up. He kept coming to see me whenever he had the chance, trying everything to win me back, sending me expensive gifts. Even when I threw them away or broke them in front of him, he just smiled and said it was okay. The more Jack acted like this, the more I despised him. I even thought Jack was mentally unstable. To get away from Jack, I started planning to move to a beautiful city and start a new life. During this time, Jack's company began to have problems. I didn't care to find out the details, but it kept Jack too busy to bother me. I finally had some peace. Half a month later, I packed my bags and headed to the airport. While waiting for my flight, I unexpectedly saw a trending video of a man and woman arguing, and the people in the video were Jack and Sophia.
Jack's company had declared bankruptcy due to financial issues, and for some reason, Sophia had a falling out with him. She was angrily calling him a freeloader at the company entrance, accusing him of taking her money without taking responsibility. A crowd of onlookers had gathered. Saw Jack keeping his head down, trying to hide his face with a folder, but Sophia clung to his arm. At that moment, the camera caught Sophia's face. T was swollen and distorted, with stiff facial muscles. She looked grotesque. Apparently, Sophia had another cosmetic surgery recently, and it had gone wrong.
At the end of the video, I heard Sophia's hysterical and crazed scream.
Jack, either give me back my money or marry me. Otherwise, I'll never let you go.
I clicked my tongue and closed the video. Their faces were just too repulsive. The boarding announcement came, and I pushed my luggage and boarded the plane. After taking my seat, I opened a magazine, flipping through it out of boredom. A passenger sat down next to me, but I didn't pay much attention and turned another page.
Cheerful, Emily, what a coincidence to see you here.
I was startled and slowly looked up.
Friendly, since we have such a fate, can you give me a chance to pursue you?